All right, for today's video review, we are taking a look at another Kingdom Deluxe. Here we have Transformers Kingdom Deluxe class Cheetor. And yeah, he looks pretty good in his cheetah mode. I'd say this is definitely the best cheetah mode that we've gotten on a Cheetor figure. There's a couple nitpicks that I have, but most of them are pretty minor. But yeah, he's a really good looking figure. Here he is. Here's his face sculpt. And a lot of the Kingdom figures, they've been deciding to not put pupils in the eyes. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that decision, but I guess it works relatively well. It's a good cheetah pattern on the face there. So he does have his feet sticking out of the back here, which I don't think is too bad. And then like the kind of tech details from his shins on the back of his legs here, I don't think that really bothers me a whole lot. The one thing that kind of bugs me is that I wish that he was kind of like able to look up a little bit more, because he's kind of stuck in this pose where he's not really looking down, but he's looking just like straight forward and, if anything, a little bit down. But just the way the hind legs work, like they don't bend any further in this way. Like this is where they stop. So unless you're like bending them and revealing that gap there, this is really like as far back as the hind legs go. And then if you straighten out the front legs all the way, he can look up a little bit more, but then it looks kind of awkward with his like legs. Like you want them to have that slight bend to them. And then the head doesn't really have any articulation, so it can't really look up. I feel like this is, again, very nitpicky, but like the stance of the front legs here is kind of wide, and it looks like there's this sculpted circle on the inside of the leg here that looks like it should kind of slot into this and make it go a little bit further in, but the joint is just far too big for that to actually fit in there correctly. So it doesn't really go any further in than this, and I wish it did, because then it would have more of that like cat-like stance, and the legs would ever so slightly be like closer to the ground, so it would push him up a little bit more. I don't know, it just kind of makes his cheetah mode look a little bit stiff. Like it still looks fantastic, don't get me wrong, but that is like I'm always, when I'm posing him, I'm always like trying to push the legs in further, and they just don't go in further than this, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, articulation wise, like I mentioned, the legs can go out, but of only about that far in. They're on a ball joint connected up here, so they can kind of like rotate a little bit. Then they rotate here, and then they bend that far forward and about that far back, and then the feet are on ball joints. And for the hind legs, they do move out at this joint, but then you're kind of like revealing that gap in the body. So like, and they're attached to the body up here, which is like the robot mode hips, but this is supposed to be part of the body of the cheetah. So I don't think that, like you can kind of tilt them out this way just with the thigh swivel, but you can't really like do anything super crazy. And then the knees bend about that far forward, which looks weird, and then only really that far back. So it's mostly like, I don't know, I feel like that's more like the dynamic range, because any further than that, it looks like you're breaking his leg. And then these feet are on ball joints as well. And then the mouth does open, and that's the only articulation for the head. It kind of looks like there should be a cut here, but there's not. Excuse me. But yeah, pretty good cheetah mode overall. Just like a few nitpicky things where it's like just close to being a little bit better, and I wish it were, but it's still pretty good overall. I'll show him off here with here he is with Kingdom Rat Trap, Thrilling 30 Rhinox, and then Kingdom Optimus Primal to get the original four-man Axelon crew all there together. And yeah, they look great together. I'm really excited about this team up. They look super fantastic. And just to mention it here, I did a little edit to Rat Trap so his gun could store in alt mode underneath him. I just like 3D printed a tiny little peg here, and then drilled into the gun, and then glued that in there, and then did a little tiny hole right there on that piece, which doesn't show up in robot mode. So it stores a little bit better. It's just like, cool. Wish that they would have engineered something like that into the figure, but I'm totally happy doing that myself. But yeah, that kind of fixes the storage problem for Rat Trap for me. And then I'll show them off with Kingdom Black Arachnia and the original Beast War Silverbolt. Why not? So there they are together. But yeah, transformation wise, the first thing that you want to do is kind of separate the legs back here. They sort of like foop into place over here. So you just open that up a little bit so you can kind of twist out the tail that just pegs into the back there. That will be his weapon. And you straighten out the legs, and then you rotate these legs forward, and then also bring the feet that were in the calves back here and bring them around. And then the feet just kind of like sit up like that on the shins of the robot mode, and there you pretty much have his legs all done. Then you take these side little panels here. You don't necessarily have to do this. Like sometimes they come with the chest when you open it, but you open those up, and then you open all this up as well. Try to get like a fingernail in between these sections because they peg together pretty securely. There we go. So you rotate all of that out. And then the arms here are kind of, they have these little tiny clips. So be careful of those, or hooks, I guess. So just kind of undo those and rotate them out, and then rotate the hands around 180. And then just bring the arms up a little. Well, I guess you don't have to do that just yet, but open the cheetah jaw all the way. And then you kind of pull it out and then double hinge it down into the section. And then this weird like jutting out section will tab into the top of the roof of the mouth of the cheetah head. So you just kind of want to press that in there, and then take these side panels, which this is why you do the arms out of the way, and then rotate those in, and those will just tab into the side to kind of fill out the body. And then you can bring the arms back down. Rotate the head around. You kind of want to like angle it and rotate it. Otherwise, like stuff kind of bumps into each other. And then the back legs here, you just want to sort of just do the Cheetor crisscross. They don't tab in or anything. They just kind of sit on top of each other. But yeah, that's all you do there. And there you have Cheetor in his robot mode. Let me adjust the camera real quick. And there we go. And yeah, he's a pretty good looking Cheetor figure. I'd say that some of the colors, like the blue is kind of this baby blue, whereas he had more of like a metallic, like dark blue in the show. And we've seen images of the Netflix version of this figure that's going to eventually be coming out that has more of that metallic blue. So I kind of considered passing on this guy to wait for that version, but then I remembered like how much of a nightmare it was to go and search for the Netflix figures for like Bumblebee and Soundwave. So I was like, let me just get this figure, and then if I end up wanting that one later and find it, then I've got it. And if I don't find it, at least I still have this figure who is perfectly passable. So I might get that figure if I can find it, but you know, this one will do for now. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just kind of a different shade of blue than I'm used to on Cheetor. But yeah, he's a pretty good looking figure. I'd say out of the Kingdom Deluxes, he's probably the one I'm least impressed with, but he's definitely growing on me. He includes his tail whip weapon, which I kind of wish they had done like the tail gun rather than the whip, because the whip was really more of his like Transmetal figure's weapon. And really he used like the gut gun most in the show, but I was the aesthetic of that gun kind of skeeves me out a little bit. So I'm always more partial towards the tail gun, which he used once or twice in the show. But he can hold it either at the end here, which I guess he could do it as a whip, or he holds it at the end of the tail, and that's more of like a whip club thing. It's kind of at an awkward angle in his hand, like it floats all the way back here. So it can be kind of difficult to pose with him. And the annoying thing about it, which annoys me less on this figure than some of the other ones, but only because I found a way around it, is that like there's just no storage at all for this weapon in robot mode. And like that kind of sucks. Like I don't want my figures to always be holding their weapons, and especially since this is kind of an awkward weapon, like I wish there was just somewhere baked into the figure that I could actually store this. Like it seems like all the Kingdom figures, it's like, oh yeah, you only have to store the weapon in one mode and not the other one, which is kind of a bummer. But with Cheetor, I've found that like since he's got this space back here with his legs crossed, I can just kind of like slot this in there, and if I'm like flinging the figure around or turning him upside down, like obviously it's not secure, but it definitely does hold just due to gravity. Usually it holds a little bit better than that, but yeah, kind of like that. So it kind of slots in there nicely and follows like the curves of his back. Like it works, and like it's practically, I think it solves the problem, but like on principle, I'm irritated that that only happened by circumstance and wasn't like, it'd be so easy to just put a little tab or a little hole back here to just slot it in and tab it in. Like it irritates me that it wasn't a design priority at all. But yeah, otherwise it's a pretty good figure. Articulation wise, the arms here, they're kind of in these big sort of hollow sections, but they are on a separate joint that can kind of go out of that. So you can kind of rotate them forward on this like sort of butterfly joint to about there. And then the arms have universal joints here at the shoulders, I almost said thigh, bicep swivel, bends over 90 at the elbow, and then a wrist swivel for transformation. But he does have this kind of like plank of cheetah parts hanging off the side, so that can look a little weird depending on how you place it. He's got a waist swivel, a ball joint at the neck, which is kind of seated in the back of his head, so it allows him to look up a little bit. But when he rotates his head, it kind of offsets it a little bit. Not enough to really be like too bad, but something to consider. And then he's got, let me just take that out for now. He's got universal joints at the hips. This can move out of the way. You usually can kind of get around it, but if you need that to move out of the way, it does have a hinge there. He's got a thigh swivel, maybe a tiny bit over or under 90 bend at the knee, which is a little bit disappointing, but it works well enough. And then the feet can move forward and back on the joint for transformation, and then also bend up to the side. So he's got pretty good feet articulation, which is good because his feet are so tiny that they really do need to get like a solid flat stance to balance him really well, but it does end up working out in the end. I'll show him off with the other Kingdom figures and Beast Wars guys. Here he is again with Optimus Primal, Rhinox, and Rat Trap to show off that original Axelon crew there. And yeah, they look great together. I know we're getting a new Rhinox eventually in Kingdom, and I could use it. This figure is starting to feel a little bit dated, and the transformation is kind of a pain, but he really does look fantastic. So if we never got one, I think he fits in perfectly fine with these guys. But yeah, here he is with Black Arachnia and Silverbolt as well. So yeah, pretty good scale here. He's like kind of just an average size deluxe. And yeah, that's the only thing I can really think of left to mention is that he had this clip, which was here, let me gotta untransform him a little bit, but there was this little tiny, really thin tab right here that pegged in, and he's packaged in robot mode, but like if you can see, the plastic here is like so incredibly thin that like I'd seen reports of this breaking on other people's, that I just decided to try to like stick an X-Acto knife in there and just like whittle it down so it would break when I did it. And I think it would have broken no matter what, but I wanted it to be a little bit controlled so it wasn't breaking any of the rest of this. But it's so that's probably going to break if you get this figure, but it's completely unnecessary. Like it doesn't hold anything really in place, and it just doesn't have to be there at all, and you can't see it in either mode. So even though it breaks, like it's not like an eyesore or anything like that, just something to be aware of. And I don't think I mentioned it in Black Arachnia's review, but she also had a similar clip like that, like not that thin, but there was a clip on her chest here that honestly, if someone else hadn't pointed it out, that there was like a bigger tab here that broke, like I don't think I ever would have noticed. But like looking at it now, like that piece definitely looks like something snapped off there, but like it tabs in just fine. So I don't know, it seems to be kind of a theme of some of the Kingdoms figures is like easily broken tabs that are just completely structurally unnecessary. So not a big problem, but if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, I guess it's something to consider. But like if it doesn't cause any issues with the figure, like it really doesn't bother me at all. It just makes me a little bit worried about some of the future figures in case they've got tabs that aren't structurally insignificant that break. But yeah, really not much else to say about Cheetor. I guess my only few complaints would be the blue isn't quite right, and the cheetah mode like doesn't really. I wish the legs could go in a little bit farther together, but like really, those are not huge problems for me. I mean, the weapon thing is irritating, but like it's not really a complaint for this figure since it's got like an easy solution. It's more of just like a ongoing complaint that I have with design philosophy in some of these lines. But yeah, no, Cheetor comes out of it pretty well. I love his face sculpt. I don't know if I showed that off well enough yet. He's got a little tiny maximal symbol on there, but yeah, not really much more else to say. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do BotBots reviews on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then other reviews like these on Sundays. And if you have anything you want me to review, leave it in the comments. I've got, kind of a list of stuff I like to get to, but really I'm just kind of picking whatever I feel interested in that week. But yeah, let me know and I'll let you know if I've got it. But without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations, War for Cybertron, Kingdom, Deluxe Class, Cheetor, with all of his titles.